Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the River Dragon project, and our problem with this one, and again, I always like to look at these as problems that we have to solve, is how do we integrate this dragon into this realistic background on the riverbed to make it look at least somewhat realistic, like it almost belongs there. Okay, so there are a bunch of different things we need to do, including add a reflection and a drop shadow, which are challenges. So I will walk you through how to do that. The first thing we need to do is get this white background off of the dragon. So we want to mask out the dragon. We want to get that dragon out of there. So rather than using some of the traditional tools, there's a fast way to do this. Sometimes, depending again on the image that you're looking at. Well, you've got a bunch of white pixels that we want to get rid of. There are a few really light pixels inside of the dragon. I know they're green, but they are on the very light side, so we have to be careful not to select those. But what we're going to use is called select color range. Okay, and when we do select color range, we get this dialog box up. And the problem with this is if we go ahead and do a color range selection here, we will get portions of the background as well. So that's undesirable. We're just trying to get this white box. So I'm just going to close that out and make sure we hide our background before we do this. So I go to select color range, and then if I click on any of these white pixels in here, and it doesn't matter what tool you have, it'll detect that we clicked on white pixels. You'll see this change to a pretty black and white image. Now that's a sort of a preview of a mask. The white pixels are the ones that are going to be selected. The black pixels are the ones that will not be selected. So we want to make sure we have virtually no white in there. But we don't want to go too low. Otherwise, you can actually see some of the artifacts that are difficult to detect by the naked eye that could be selected around there. So we want to bump it up to, let's go up to about 120 or so. Let's see if this one works. And I'm going to click OK. You can see now that every white pixel on the interior has been selected, but before we actually select the dragon, we want to select all of the transparent pixels on the outside of this interior image. So to do that, I'm simply going to select my magic wand tool and hold down Shift, and watch, remember this button changes when we hold down Shift to add to our selection. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on any of those transparent pixels, and it does a nice job of quickly selecting all those empty pixels. So now what we have to do before we mask this dragon out is we want to invert our selection so that the only thing that's selected is our dragon. So again, I'm going to go to Select, Inverse, and you'll see now we have our dragon. And let's zoom in here to see how it looks. You can see that if we were to mask it out right now, we have all these white interior pixels that would not be good. It would look like the dragon has a white outline. Because we don't want any of those white pixels, we have to contract our selection. So we're going to go to Select, Modify, Contract, and we're going to do this by 1 pixel, and you should see this bounce in. The problem I have with, let's do it again. For some reason, there was a little bug there. Contract, 1 pixel. Something happened. Looks like the Oh, I know what happened. Let's undo that. Let's get back to this selection. I accidentally used my wand, I think, and clicked on the white again because my spacebar wasn't working. There we go. Problem I have with this is now we have these interior pixels that are selected that we don't want. There's not a whole lot of them. If you scan around the dragon, you can see that we have all these interior white pixels. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if we can grab our wand, hold down Shift, and add to our selection so we don't get any of these masked out. And again, you have to be very careful and look around and try to find these pixels. There's a few of them, not many, just a few. And a couple up here. And hopefully we don't get any white outlines doing it this way. Just so you know, Photopea doesn't do as good of a job with this exercise as Photoshop, but we're still going to make it work. So I'm looking, everything else looks okay. Couple in here. Shift, come on, Shift. Here we go, there we go. One more look. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to feather it by 1 pixel so we get a soft outline that allows the dragon to blend in with its surroundings a little bit better. So feather by 1, click OK. I think I see another pixel up here. I'm going to grab my wand again, hold down Shift, add to my selection, and hopefully we'll get a decent mask here. So all we have to do to mask that white portion out is go down to our little mask button here in the layers window and add raster mask, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to show that background again. Now, as I stated in the beginning, we are going to have to create a reflection for the dragon and a cast shadow. Okay, so we're going to want to duplicate this layer 2 times, and we'll show you why in a minute. So remember, the hotkey for duplicating a layer quickly is Control-J, so I'm going to hit Control-J twice. The bottom layer I'm going to call Dragon Shadow. The middle layer I'm going to call Dragon Reflection. And then I can just leave, well, let's change that to Dragon. The real dragon. Oh, come on. Sorry for wasting your time. All right, dragon. Okay, now we're going to hide. Actually, we're going to shift select all 3 of these. All right, so we have dragon, 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 all 3. If I hold down shift, click on the bottom layer, it will select everything in between, which in this case is just the dragon reflection layer. And now what we want to do is we want to do a free transform. So go to Edit, Free Transform. And we are going to change the height and width to 70%. We're going to scale this guy down. Okay, and I believe if I click this here, it will link the 2. Let's see what happens. There we go. So it changed height and width to 70%. All right, so now that we have all 3, we hit the check mark. I'm going to hide this layer and this layer. And now we're going to prepare just a dragon layer a little bit. And now we're going to move the dragon layer up and behind that rock. I know it doesn't look like it's behind that rock, but what we're going to do in a little bit is we're going to mask out his feet. So it looks like the dragon's feet are in the water behind the rock. And when you do things like that, it really helps integrate images into backgrounds or scenes. When you have something behind something or in front of something, it really helps make it look like it's in that place. So right now, let's just leave it here. It looks like he's standing on the rock. That's fine. We'll do that in a little bit. But what we want to do is, if you notice, we have these very earth-tony backgrounds, and it's very bright outside because of the light source. And the light source is our sun, right? And we have to understand something about lighting now. Okay, light source dictates shadow angle. All right, I'm going to say that again. Light source dictates shadow angle. In addition, because light bounces off of surfaces, there's a reason why, even though the sun is up way out over here, we can see this part of the rock. You can see the top of the rock is in direct contact with sunlight, but this side that gets blocked out by its own surface, you can still see quite a bit of it, right? And that's because of bounce light. That's because light is bouncing all over the place, and sometimes we call that ambient light. But what we want to do is we want to try to match the color and the lightness of the dragon with the surroundings. All right, so to do that, we're going to add an adjustment layer, or a couple of adjustment layers actually. So make sure you're on dragon layer, and we're going to go down to here, this little icon here, and we have a bunch of layers that we can play with. In this case, we're going to start with levels. All right, and the first thing we want to do is we want to right click and do what's called a clipping mask, and that will create this arrow here. And what that arrow tells us is it's only going to affect the layer beneath this adjustment layer, this levels adjustment layer. If you don't do that, it's going to affect all of the layers beneath it. Okay, so we can do this, and we'll show you later how we can copy and paste adjustment layers, but for now we're just worried about the dragon layer. Okay, so what we're going to do is when we get this properties window up and we have our levels here, the first one I always like to play with is the mid-tone, which is this gray box right here. If I move it left, And right, you can see it really lightens and darkens the midtones. But what we want to do is just slightly go to the left. We don't want to blow it out. We want to keep some of the dark. So I'm going to go left, and then I'm going to bring the black one in right, because the key to integrating something into another scene is to match the lightest lights with the darkest darks. All right, it's not an easy thing to do, but if you just sort of eyeball it and you play with these sliders, you'll get it to a point where we have our lightest lights and our lightest darks sort of matched up. And in this case, in our background, you can see the darkest dark is really almost pure black. So we have to, at some point, this dragon, as much as we can, get to pure black. And underneath the feet, you can see that it's almost pure black, and in some other areas. All right, and then the next adjustment layer we're going to add is called hue and saturation, and that's because, again, we have to clip that down, clipping mask. That's because this guy is a little bit too green, a little fake green. We don't want that greenness. We want to take some of that saturation down. If I go up to the right with saturation, you'll see the colors really starting to come alive, and that looks really awful. But if we take it down, we get more of this earth tony feel to our dragon. And if you want to play with hue a little bit and adjust maybe to the left, add a little bit of red to it. We don't want to go and create a blue dragon or anything. We're just going to go to the left a little bit and again sort of add earth tone looking colors to the dragon. And that looks pretty good right there. Okay? And the last thing we're going to do and to finish up part one of this exercise is we need our levels and hue saturation changes that we did to the dragon layer to also affect the dragon reflection, because watch, when we're going to use this for reflection, if we don't do anything, we're going to have a reflection that doesn't look much like the new dragon at all. Okay, so to do that, all we have to do is right click on levels and go duplicate layer, right click on hue saturation, also duplicate layer, and then we get those copies. You can see they say copy. I'm going to drag this down to be right above my dragon reflection, and I'm going to drag level 1s down again to be above hue and saturation. So you can see once we did that, we still clip to the layer below. So now both of these are affecting this layer, both of these are affecting this layer, and we could be ready to flip that around and create a reflection. But for now, we still need to work on our dragon layer, so I'm just going to hide all three of those to get them out of the way. And that's pretty much it for part one. And I will launch part two to you tomorrow.